Okay, thank you everybody, and a very warm welcome for those that are joining us this afternoon. We're pleased to be joined by a number of parliamentarians and people from industry, academic experts, have all been able to join us for the launch of the new Greater Manchester All-Party Parliamentary Group series. The overarching theme for this year is levelling up, a year that is certain to continue to be dominated by the pandemic, recession, recovery, and withdrawal from the European Union. So after a year of lockdowns and tiered level restrictions, we know that there are some serious and devastating economic challenges ahead for Greater Manchester. Our region has been hit hard, and how we live, work, rest and play has changed. So how can Greater Manchester's towns and cities drive future growth and recovery? And that's our discussion today. Greater Manchester is known for its resilience and ambition. So today we will hear firsthand from Greater Manchester's business leaders about their vision, levelling up, and what is needed to get our towns and cities back to work. The key question we are seeking to address is, quite simply, how do we build back Greater Manchester's city and towns and level up? So just a bit of housekeeping. We'll run through the points with you before we start the session. It is being recorded and it will be shared on our website. Please, if you're going to tweet, use the hashtag #LevellingUpGM, and the tag is at GMAPPG to continue the debate and share your thoughts online. While the panelists talk, please use the chat function to share your comments and questions for the chair to draw on. Please indicate who your question is aimed at by typing their full name before your question. And panelists, please, can you mute your microphones when they're not being used? Remember, though, to unmute when engaging in the debate. It's the curse of the pandemic that after 12 months we still don't know how to use this technology, but remember to unmute. Raise your hand function is available to indicate that you wish to respond, and you can find that when clicking on participants. So this session is about generating debate and demonstrating how Greater Manchester's political and business leaders can work together to build back our towns and cities after the pandemic into recovery. The emphasis is going to be on discussion rather than presentation. And we've got some great panelists, and I will invite them to provide a short contribution. We've got Sheona Southern from Marketing Manchester, Sir Howard Bernstein from Deloitte, Jessica Bowles from Bruntwood, and Chris Fletcher from the Greater Manchester Chamber of Commerce. So if we can go to Sheona first, please.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, everyone. So I'm MD of Marketing Manchester, and we are the destination management organisation for Greater Manchester, and that includes activity such as promoting all of the priority sectors for the region, and that includes the Tourism Board and the Convention Bureau function. And today I've been asked to focus on the tourism, hospitality and leisure sector because that's the one that's been most hit. Be happy to take any questions from any of the other sectors as well, though. But the first point I think to say is just a thank you to government and local MPs, in particular Lucy, for the help over the last 12 months. We've lobbied, we've fought hard, and I think we've got a good roadmap in the end with decent business grants, rates relief and furlough, etc. Help out, eat out to help out, all of that. I think that was a good show. We lobbied on behalf of the Cllr group, and so last March we set up the Tourism Industry Emergency Recovery and Response Group. That was represented by all sorts of businesses across the visitor economy, and we've been working hard since then. And I'll go on a little bit to talk about the recovery plan that we have launched and we're underway with. But first of all, I've been asked to kind of set the scene with perhaps some an explanation of how important this sector is to the visitor economy in GM. So if I could throw some stats at you, perhaps you could throw me back later on. Some of these stats are really quite hard hitting. So tourism and hospitality sector in the UK accounts for 11% of all jobs. It's the third largest employer, supporting 3.2 million people and another 1.5 million in the supply chain. So the sector generates 130 billion in turnover the year. Just to put that into context, that's the same as the financial services and more than automotive, pharmaceuticals and aerospace sectors combined. It's a huge sector. Inbound tourism alone is bigger than UK's food and beverage exports combined. And the tax bill back to the government is 39 billion in tax, and that's the equivalent of the entire social care or UK defence budget. It's big. Before COVID, it was growing at a rate of 4.5%. That was compared with about a 1% growth across the wider economy. And in Greater Manchester, we were growing at 7%, showing it was almost double the UK's growth. So for GM, that means it's a £9 billion economy and supporting 101,000 jobs. 63% of those jobs are filled by people who live outside of the city centre, right across Greater Manchester, so it benefits all of Greater Manchester. We are the third most visited destination in the UK, and that's after London and Edinburgh. And a levelling up point, just for international visitors alone, we receive about 1.4 million. That's compared with London's 20 million. So it's a bit, you know, London dominates in terms of inbound visitors. So all of that, what it means for the sector, from a booming sector before COVID, we've now been the most impacted sector, and we'll probably, well, we're first in and we'll be last out. And we estimate that from the sector, we will have lost 61% of the 9 billion across the economy by the end of this year. So that's kind of to set the scene. I think more than ever, we need to build back. We've got some, on a positive note, we've got some really good investments in the sector. Just this year alone, we're expecting another 1,000 beds to the economy. And we're also expecting some fabulous new attractions. So RHS Bridgewater opens up this year. We've got a second arena, we've got Therme, we've got the factory opening up in the next few years. The Manchester museums are also opening up new developments. They all need new visitors to fill them. So the good news is that we have a plan, and the Cllr group launched a recovery and support plan last October. It was a robust plan, and we're already underway. We supported on 3 major points. One was to give business support across the sector, and we work with about 1,500 tourism businesses on our platforms alone. But we also work really closely with the Business Growth Hub, and we launched a tourism support hub. And with the skills team at the growth company, we launched a tourism and talent hub to support on skills and business. We worked really hard to represent GM at a national level, that's in particular through DCMS and Visit Britain, Visit England. And then moving to more of an action plan, there's 4 points I'd like to share with you that's really relevant for the discussion today. And they're all around our action plan. So first of all is to give confidence back to the sector. We must give confidence back to consumers and businesses coming back into our towns and cities. So we have a series of campaigns all ready to go as the restrictions lift over the coming months and through the year. And they are targeted at accommodation, culture and attractions, food and beverage, retail, the whole gambit right through to business conferencing. We've also got a university campaign and a back to office campaign. So we do need government intervention to deliver these campaigns. It's a massive recovery job on our hands. And until the private sector and Manchester Airport are back up and running, and that's usually where we get our income from, usually we're 70% funded by the commercial sector, we do need government support to do this. So the towns and investment funds could be a source, the community fund could be a source, and we've got some brilliant ideas to bring those towns and villages and cities back to life again, to celebrate their distinctiveness, to get focus on brilliant places to live and have careers. We've got some great ideas, so I can talk more about them later. The second point is to rebuild our international profile, and that's about collaborating with Manchester Airport, with Visit Britain, with DIT, and Midas, ourselves, and the airport submitted a route development fund, because that's what's going to be needed to reignite some of those direct routes and get us back on par in an international marketplace again. The third point is to get our business visits and events and sporting events, large sporting events, back on and into Greater Manchester. And this sector faces probably the biggest competition, because not only do we have competition for international, we also have competition from our domestic markets. So Cardiff, Blackpool and Aberdeen are all opening new conference facilities this year, and with very attractive subvention budgets. So we need recovery resource to help to get those and attract those events in, but also to grow our homegrown events that perhaps we wouldn't be bidding for, we could grow on our own. And the last point is to, we seek support in terms of destination management organisations like Marketing Manchester are also vulnerable to all of this and have been impacted by COVID. And DCMS announced a review of DMOs on the 1st of March, and the consultation process is about to start. And that process is aiming, the government aims through that process to engage with the wider local and regional landscape to create an English destination, set of destinations that is trying to level up. So it's really relevant for this discussion. But it's also to enable the government to deliver its UK's tourism policy, and we are really in the thick of the discussion. So that's my main points to contribute to the discussion. Would really welcome any questions. Pass it back to you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Sheona. And it's easy to overlook just how important the tourist sector is to Greater Manchester, and how much we've got to offer as a city region on a whole range of visitor destinations and tourist attractions, and as a vibrant city region. So it's certainly going to be important that we build back that particular sector, and it will be an important part of ensuring that our city region continues to grow. Thank you for your contribution. If I can bring in Sir Howard next, please.
Thanks very much, Andrew, and hi everyone. I really don't want to spend too much time talking about the all too familiar impacts of the crisis which we've all endured. What I want to say really comes under three headings. One, something about the key challenges, something around place leadership, and finally something about what I think the role of government might be in helping us to recover. So the first point for me is, notwithstanding the impacts, I think personally we're going to be witnessing an evolution of the urban environment, certainly rather than a terminal decline of our city and town centres. But in having said that, there are challenges. The most obvious one is what the crisis has done is intensify the structural shifts, which I think have been in evidence for some time, particularly around retail, and has underlined also the criticality of mixed use, particularly in relation to culture, leisure and housing. The second point I would make is that the pattern of commercial offices is going to change a little over the coming years. But I think that was also changing actually before the crisis. The requirements, the occupational requirements of innovation-based companies, which is more value-driven, a requirement for more network space, is very different from the requirements of commercial and professional services. There is a higher value being placed on green spaces and what we mean by high quality public realm. So the need to reimagine spaces which have cultural, educational, community facilities at their heart are also important, as of course is the obvious need to think through what we mean by a transition to a net zero economy and what that means for the built form and for active health, travel and mobility arrangements. So those are the challenges. Place leadership. The process of reimagination and positive planning, and I would describe it, requires leadership, strong place leadership, which is a creative endeavour. So how democratically accountable leaders exercise their convening powers to connect business, institutions and residents to their place is very important. So is the need to create a shared identity and a vision which responds to those changing priorities. And of course, developing a strategy and plans involving the private sector and government in order to help them make them a reality. Even the best place leaders are going to have to step up to the challenge over the coming months. But I think we are highly fortunate in Greater Manchester. There is much more stronger evidence, at least to me, of vibrant local place leadership throughout Greater Manchester, which have prioritised their towns and their city centres. So I think we can look forward with great confidence of them being able to do that. Let me just say a few things about the role of government. One, I think it needs to actively promote local place leadership by incentivising it. And I think secondly, what they've also got to do is provide the toolkit to enable that local place leadership to deliver. It's been put to me many times, certainly over the past months, that those sorts of requirements are interpreted as a blank cheque. Certainly the dot side of the Treasury interpret those requirements as being a blank cheque. That is not the case. There's always been a requirement to demonstrate value for money. A test which is beginning to change to reflect the challenges of urban centres outside London. And credible and relevant value for money analysis is as much about place and people as it is about buildings and what goes on in those buildings. For Greater Manchester, it's also about how the big mainstream budgets of government are deployed, as much as it is about discrete towns or levelling up funds. Let me take science as one example. One of the bigger budgets to be deployed over the coming years, which we're still waiting details upon. Greater Manchester has the potential to become a hugely significant innovation centre and stand comparison with anywhere in the world. That means a number of key requirements have to be met. First, we need our fair share of new funding to build upon our very distinctive research and development strengths, advanced materials, life sciences, energy, to name a few. That means we need a recalibration of the national model, which in the past has tended to favour, for the most part, London, Oxford and Cambridge. Secondly, we also need to see significant investment in our local manufacturing facilities to ensure that our supply chains benefit from our own scientific endeavours. That's of real relevance, in my view, to the northern and eastern parts of Greater Manchester. We should also address what we mean by workspace in our town centres. So long as they're properly networked and supported, that will ensure that we widen and diversify our business base and employment base in all of our towns. We should also address what we mean by skills and also how we invest in our health innovation system. If we do all of that, our productivity will increase very, very significantly, and that will be one of the most important ways we can level up in a sustainable base and create the conditions under which Greater Manchester can continue to flourish in the future.
Thank you, Sir Howard, for that contribution. And I think you've raised some really important points there, particularly about how we can lead the growth areas of science and technology as well is going to be absolutely crucial. Can I ask Jessica Bowles from Bruntwood to now make her contribution? Jessica.
Thank you very much. I'm going to follow on from some of the points that Sir Howard was making, particularly about science and innovation, and also, if it would be helpful, just talk a little bit about where we're coming from a city centre business perspective and how we see the next few months playing out and what we want to see from government, but also the way we want to work with local partners. So I'll start there and then I'll pick up on the points about science and innovation. So for those who don't know us, Bruntwood are a family-owned regional property company. We're based headquartered in Greater Manchester, but work across the cities of the North and the Midlands. Chris Oglesby, our chief executive, very early in the pandemic started working with a wider set of business leaders to create United City, which was effectively to support local partners, local government, health partners, and to work with government through this, through the pandemic, and to ensure that there was a safe reopening as quickly as possible, particularly of the city centre, recognising the role that the city centre plays as an engine of growth for the whole of the city region, and that without a strong city centre we all lose something. And Sheona talked about the role that it plays in the visitor economy and in attracting international visitors to the region. So that's, we established United City. We have created a manifesto, which some of you will have seen, which we put out before the roadmap. And really at the heart of that was the idea that business has a role to play with local partners and with central government to deliver the roadmap. The roadmap can be the roadmap that government sets out, but actually it needs to work in place. And that goes again to Howard's point about place leadership. So in that, we see business having a really critical role in supporting the reopening of the economy, and to do that in a safe way, and in particular through the role we can play as business owners and business leaders in creating safe workplaces for our colleagues and our staff. And we think that there's a really important point that's missing from the roadmap, which is about how you create a phased return to the workplace. We already know that there are people going back into workplaces. They're doing that because they can't work from home for a whole range of needs which go beyond the tasks that they're doing, and really sit at the heart of their mental well-being and their ability to work in a safe environment at home. So we we think there is a case for having a phased return to the workplace from the middle of April if numbers remain low. We think you can do that by creating some COVID safe workplaces, by sitting alongside, by supporting local test and trace rather than national test and trace, and potentially by creating a form of kite mark which can give people confidence about coming back into our towns and cities, and using the whole range of amenities and facilities that we have there. So we're continuing to do work on that. The United City brand is very much wanting to be research driven. So we're not doing this, we're not sort of just picking a position at one end of the extreme or the other, but really trying to cement this in what we know is important, and to help the city region get back on its feet as quickly as possible. So that's the kind of short-term piece really over the coming months. But looking beyond that, we see a critical role around those how we rebuild the economy and how we continue to build the economy of Greater Manchester. And as Howard said, science is one of the major budgets that government has. It wants to increase the proportion of GDP that's to 2.4%. That's a significant amount of money. We can and Chris again has been leading work around a project called Innovation GM, which brings together partners from the public sector and private sector, and to really see how we can create that strategic oversight and strategic rationale for investing in science across the city. We've got some brilliant assets already in the city region. We've got Salford Quays, we've got the Corridor Partnership, and we've got many other centres of science, but actually how we join those together and create a strong ecosystem is going to be critical, and how we also tool up people so that they can take jobs in the innovation space. We can talk about that more in the Q&A as it comes, but I think that really making that case to government, that taking a strategic view rather than picking individual assets and hoping that amounts to more than the sum of the parts, is going to be really important from our perspective as a leading business in the city region. So I'm going to stop there, because I know that you want to leave plenty of time for questions, and hopefully that's whetted people's appetite to know how we might do that and what it might look like, and how you can support it, and pass back to the chair, Andrew.
Thanks, Jessica. And of course, the points you make in terms of the short term, bringing back the city centre and the central business district back to life is going to be crucial, not just for those businesses, but also for all the ecosystem, as you say, of the city centre, from the bars, the restaurants, the hairdressers, the news agents, everything, the butty shop. It's all crucial that we get people back to work in the central business district. Although, as Sir Howard says, some of these trends to home working and using new technology were already there before. We've got to look at how we build back to facilitate this new way of working, but without destroying the economy of our town centres. And you're absolutely right about the economic prospects for the future as well, and how we ensure that we get that sustainable growth in the right areas, and ensure that that's matched with the skills of the city region as well. Our last contribution in this section is Chris Fletcher from the Greater Manchester Chamber. So over to you, Chris.
Thanks very much, Chair, and good afternoon, everyone. I just want to start off really with some general comments, really, and I won't go over what our previous panelists have said. There have been some excellent contributions there, and a lot of that chimes with some of the stuff I was going to say. But obviously what I want to do is try and bring in the voice of business. We've had a lot of discussions with our members. We are the largest Chamber of Commerce in the UK, 4,700 members spread throughout the whole of Greater Manchester. And what I want to do is bring in some of the conversations we've been having with our members around that. I think it's important to say, though, that what we can't just do is take a shortcut and just go back to where we were 12 months ago and look at this purely through the lens of the local economy. If we just go back to where we were with the economy, we've missed a huge opportunity. It's about our people, it's about our communities as well. And the last 12 months have really highlighted some of those long-term, long-standing issues that we had and that we're aware of. And in a way, it's sort of compressed and magnified them. So part of what we've got to do in this is, yes, get the economy back on track, get those people back into the city centres, but we've got to look at it in a way that we address some of those issues as well. Next week, we release our first quarterly economic survey results, and we're probably heading towards a new terminology, in that we're probably looking at something like a W-shaped recovery. We've had the down and the up just before Christmas, the big down after Christmas, and now that will be probably going back up again. Where it starts to get into the realms of growth again is probably somewhere in the second half of the year, to be completely honest. But things are on the up again. And I think that sets an interesting challenge here, because while a lot of the discussion will be around what is different, if people start to go back into the city centre and it looks exactly like it did beforehand, there's a problem there, because people will think, oh, well, everything's okay, everything's back to normal as it was, let's just carry on doing what we've always done. So I think it's quite important that we look at the timings on this. And some of the things we're talking about here, you know, wholesale changes to how we use buildings in cities and town centres, will take time to do. So I think it's important that message is communicated to people, because if you're expecting to go back into your office and everything's different, I think you're going to be disappointed. And I think there's an important key bit behind that change has to happen. Well, that will take some time to come through. So what have we been talking about with our members around our cities and towns, and what is needed to put growth back in there and get them going again? Obviously, I think Howard touched on this really well about those different uses of our town centre buildings and our city centre buildings. And again, you know, that idea of shared working spaces, startup units, local incubator space, that's an area we've always been short of across Greater Manchester for those startup businesses. We've got all sorts of space now available on the high street and elsewhere to begin to make that happen. And again, picking up on the science issues there that's been discussed. And linked to that as well is greater use and focus on the residential element of that, of using some of this empty space. And let's be honest, that's what happened in the 1990s in Manchester city centre itself. You got people to come in and start to live again in the city centre, and on the back of that, your services and support will quickly follow. So I think that's important. It's highly crucial we don't forget the role of town centres in this as well, and looking at those areas outside the city centre. The second bit is really based around transport as well, and what needs to be done. We are starting off a little bit with not exactly a blank piece of paper here when it comes to our local transport network, but with government controlling the rail network, possibility of bus franchising coming in. We've got Metrolink, we've got different demands at different times of day now around that. It does offer an opportunity to look at things differently. But whatever happens, it's got to be structured, integrated, reliable, green, and also easy to use as well to get those people back on there. Again, this is around timing. If that public transport offer is not up to speed when people need it, they'll revert back to using vehicles, and it will put everything back a significant period, and we really can't afford to do that. And now's the time to invest in public transport, both in infrastructure and services. Don't go off what the demand is now, look at what the demand is in the future. And again, I think that's an absolutely crucial thing to say. Skills is important, and again, this isn't about businesses owning the skills system. To be quite honest, a lot of businesses aren't bothered what that skills system is. What they want is what it can produce. And that's the skilled workforce for now and in the future, in those areas and in those sectors that will grow in time to come. And it's quite important the local part of that doesn't get lost with top-down government demands, which we're beginning to see in things like the local skills, the Skills for Job white paper, which came out a couple of weeks ago. It's crucial we've got that local bit in there and local business involvement in it. And underpinning it all, we need digital accessibility and we need zero carbon. Digital poverty and digital inclusion, two terms that have really risen to the top of importance over the last 12 months. And it's not just about young people, school children being unable to access learning from home. It's everything right through all age groups, all abilities, and people need those skill sets as well as that access point. So a couple of things. We've seen recently that governments have put a big red line through its industrial strategy. We've got our local industrial strategy. It was good enough a couple of years ago, and I think it's good enough now. So please don't forget that. That's the bedrock, that's the foundation, that's the blueprint of what we need to do going forward. And businesses want to support that as well. And finally, don't underestimate Brexit in all this as well, the impact of that. We're getting hundreds and hundreds of calls from businesses with all sorts of issues around this. That could start to nibble away at any early signs of recovery and economic growth on the back of this. So it's important we don't forget that in the drive to respond. Greater Manchester's done all this once. We've come out of real tragedy. We've come out of very harsh economic conditions, and I think actually we're in probably a better place to do it again and do it even better. Chair, back to you.
Thanks, Chris. I knew somebody had to mention the B word somewhere in that, but you're absolutely right to, because as we come out of this pandemic, we've kind of been a bit insulated from some of the effects of Brexit because of the pandemic. And I think that the true impact will start to really be felt once the economy opens up, something closer to normality. So thank you for that, Chris. And I also think it's important what you've said about linking the transport and the skills agenda to the economic growth of the city region, because I've always said the real success is going to be at some stage in the future, how do you get that kid from Denton and Reddish skilled up to be able to access those new state-of-the-art jobs at Media City UK, but just as importantly, how do you physically get them across the city region from Tameside and Stockport over to Salford? And if we don't get that right, we're not going to get that growth that we all want to see. So I think you've raised some really important points there, Chris. Thank you. So the next stage of this meeting is to invite local leaders, MPs and peers to also make some short contributions and to get their perspectives and views on what we've just heard. And we're really fortunate to be joined by my good friend, the Mayor of Greater Manchester, Andy Burnham. Welcome, Andy, and I don't know if you want to say a few words.
Thanks very much, Andrew. I've been fascinated, obviously, listening to what Sir Howard, Jessica and Chris have been saying. Agree with, I think, all of it. I'm kind of not downbeat really about things. I think we were going great guns, weren't we, before the pandemic, and I think it will come back quickly in terms of the energy. I mean, obviously everyone saw the BBC's announcement yesterday, which is good news for us, and something that I'm sort of pointing to a lot at the moment. We kind of let it happen, and because of the pandemic, it kind of maybe slipped a little under the radar. But to be kind of officially designated Europe's fastest growing digital and tech hub, as we were in November last year, leaping over Cambridge into a sort of clear second place to London. I mean, that is massive, isn't it? And I think as organisations look at how they reshape after the pandemic, I think that will work in our favour as well. I do think the trend of rebalancing, both sort of politically, if you like, but also from a business point of view, will continue and will continue to our benefit. I mean, the thing I want to pick up on, Andrew, is what Chris said about transport, because it is the coming issue of the moment, and it's something that Sir Howard and many others have long worked on. I think all of our ambitions for where the city region will be in the next 5 or 10 years are critically linked to the quality of our transport system. I don't know if Howard would agree, but I think it is the thing that's most held us back. I mean, obviously we've made great progress in recent times, but whenever I speak to potential investors, it does come up. That and skills are the two things that people want to talk about most. And I think we've got an opportunity, actually, haven't we, to accelerate the break from the old Greater Manchester commute, which wasn't much fun for anybody at all. In fact, we I think much more so than London, had a very traditional 9 to 5 Monday to Friday working week, where everybody was on the system and on the roads at the same time. And because of the poor quality of the public transport offer, more people were in cars than should be, or certainly would be in a place like London, and hence the thing just not working. It is a drain on our productivity and on people's quality of life. So I kind of feel, we've just got a kind of unique chance here where we've got an alignment of things where we can kind of use the breathing space that we've got, really, because obviously there isn't going to be the rush back to work in the same way, to really crack on with the reform of the public transport system. So it's no secret now that a decision is imminent on the future of buses in Greater Manchester. But it's really important to me that we don't just talk about buses in a silo, because that is to miss the point. The opportunity in front of us is to create that London-style public transport system that I've spoken of, where we start with active travel within our communities. And we've laid some pretty impressive foundations, Andrew, haven't we, with Chris Boardman and his team in terms of what they've done. We've done the thinking in the last 4 years as to how we could build a very different neighbourhood offer when it comes to active travel. I don't know if everybody saw the drone footage of Elise's new scheme, which was proudly shown by Stockport Council yesterday. That backs up Howard's point about excellent local leadership. The B network is taking shape on the ground, and that is great to see. And we've got to kind of say, look, you've got better active travel options for your first and last mile. Then you hit a reformed bus system, which can operate in a more complementary way rather than a competitive way with Metrolink. And then it can deliver you to Metrolink so that you then can complete your journey into the city in that way. So what I'm getting to, Andrew, and I think this is incumbent on everybody on this call, myself obviously, but all colleagues, Jessica as well, everybody and Chris in the business community across the city region, we've got the chance to start to promote a very different way of moving around our city region. At the moment, I think people are prisoners of their car or prisoners of one mode of transport because of the way the system works. It's more that the way the system doesn't work. Because of the way ticketing works, you basically have to go with one mode and stick with it. Because the minute you start changing modes, you start racking up quite a high cost. So we've got the opportunity to break out of that kind of thing that we've been trapped in for 30 plus years and sell people a very different way of work, a different way of moving, a different way of working, and therefore a different way of living. A much more balanced approach to work and home, working more locally at times and perhaps working more in the office, not being rigidly stuck 9 to 5. It was brought over to me in the middle of the pandemic by Eamon Boylan that actually, because I was saying to Eamon, shouldn't we be changing the GMCA working week coming out of this? And he was saying, well, we can, it's in people's contracts. People have almost got full flexibility over their working hours. That was probably, Howard must have written that contract a number of years ago, but nobody uses it. And I think there is a cultural thing, isn't there? We've been in a very traditional mindset when it comes to presenteeism in the office 9 to 5. And I think we've just got an opportunity to sell a different vision to people about quality of life and using a much more affordable a transport system that has a daily cap on it, so that you can take as many trams or buses as you like, but you will still only pay so much in any given day. That is a game changer in my view for Greater Manchester, and that is levelling up in a much more meaningful way than pretty much anything else that's been put forward as levelling up so far. The truth of the matter is, residents in our 10 boroughs are not particularly well connected to the opportunities in our growing economy, particularly in our city centre economy. Many of our residents will find it hard to afford to access those opportunities, or indeed to get there in a timely fashion, given the nature of the transport system. And I think we've got a moment in time here where we need to make the break. It will be turbulent, Chris. There's no point in me saying not. Just as bus deregulation was turbulent back in the 1980s, whichever way we decide to go using our powers that we have to reform buses, it will still be turbulent. And I think it will need patience from the GM public. But we've got to sell them, in my view, that bigger vision now, the R network vision of an integrated system, and it ultimately with the aim of bringing trains within that same system, the GM commuter rail system, so that it all knits together. There are so many things I could talk about, Andrew, but I am just going to focus on transport because I think we're going to need a focus on it. It's going to be a tough job. It's a major undertaking. The ground has been laid for us, and we are now at decision point. And I believe once we've got it where we want it, the incentives for people to come and invest here and live here and work here will just be huge. The quality of life people will have if we could offer them a city region with a substantially different transport system, I think will exceed pretty much every other English city, including London. And I think we will be really in a position again of leadership when it comes to using a modern transport offer to support different ways of working. I do think, if I just could say, that Chris is right about startup space, co-working space. I think we do need imagination with our districts to sort of rethink town centres, as I think Howard was touching on, that enlightened local place leadership. giving people the opportunity to work from home, work in a co-working space in their locality, or then some days going into the office, giving people more flexibility over how and where they work is going to be important. Elise, I'm sure, will touch on the Stockport Mayoral Development Corporation, so I won't talk about it at length here, but clearly that is a template for how you might rethink a town, drawing on the strengths of its relationship with the city centre. I think there we have a national model of how this is done and done properly, where you're not just scattering levelling up funding to just a transport interchange or just a new a new shopping development, where you're master planning it and you are knitting in that high quality green space that Howard spoke of, the cycling and walking infrastructure. I think Elise has shown incredible local leadership to bring through that vision for 3,500 new homes under the famous arches, and as even Howard and his previous guys would have bridled unbelievably at Stockport, claiming it was going to have the coolest neighbourhood in Greater Manchester. But that's what they're saying now, Howard, and times are changing from your day. So I think when you add all this together, reformed transport system, resurgent towns, a kind of a city centre that's moving in towards more pedestrianisation, and you can cleaner air, you can see how these threads come together in a really attractive way. And I think together, if we sell that vision, we can make levelling up much more meaningful, I think, than anyone else has succeeded in making it look so far. But I just finish by saying it's that critical importance of a modern, affordable, reliable, zero emission, accountable public transport system. For me, anything else we might do would be held back if we haven't fixed that fundamental problem. If we want to be a world-class city, as we do, and we are in many ways, I want an airport where people walk out and they see a fleet of taxis that are all in the same standard. I want them to walk into the city centre and see a complementary system of buses and trams, all of it cheap and easy to use, one tap in, one tap out. That's what we want, and we've got to get on and build it now. Thanks, Andrew.
Thanks, Andy. And you're absolutely right about connectivity being at the heart of our drive for economic growth in Greater Manchester, because without it, you can have as many jobs going into the city centre or into Salford Quays or round the airport. We can't physically get to them. That growth isn't worth anything. So having that connectivity is absolutely crucial, and having a world-class public transport system where you've got active travel at the very local level with good walking and cycling facilities, where you've got decent buses that link into decent light rail and heavy rail services is a no-brainer, and it's what they're used to in London. And I always say, if a typical journey in London, you might start off on the overground, complete a bit of your journey by underground, and maybe finish it by walking, cycling on one of the, I refuse to call them Boris bikes because it was actually Ken Livingstone's innovation. It's just Boris came in at the right time to name them. But cycling part of the way, or getting the bus, and you've got a single ticket to do that. If you even tried to do that in Greater Manchester, they'd have you sectioned because they'd think you were absolutely bonkers, because nothing joins up, it all competes with one another. So we wish you all the best at trying to achieve your aims. I know you're in a quasi-judicial role, so you can't express a preference, but I can't wait to see the buses re-regulated with a franchise system, Andy. But then moving on to our next speaker, and we've heard a lot about how we build back within the city centre, and that obviously has a crucial role to play, but it's also about the towns of Greater Manchester. And as a Stockport MP for the past 16 years, I'm incredibly proud of the work that Stockport Council has done and is doing to regenerate the town centre. And with the help of the Mayoral Development Corporation, it is really going to be quite transformative, not just for Stockport town centre, but for all the outlying districts around Stockport, including Reddish and the Heatons, where I'm the Member of Parliament for, and beyond the boundaries of Stockport as well. And that's where connectivity is going to be crucial. And if I can make another plug for my constituency, I just want a train, Andy, that takes us from Denton through Reddish South into Stockport, so that we can access the hippest town in Greater Manchester when the regeneration comes through.
Lucy never used the chair for sort of naked constituency promotion, did you?
I certainly did not.
Well, you snooze, you lose. But it's a great pleasure now to introduce Councillor Elise Wilson, the leader of Stockport Council.
Thanks, Andrew. And I do maintain that we are planning the coolest suburban town centre, shall I say, to make it clear. But I think that's it, isn't it? It's about this Greater Manchester family that we're all part of, and it's the importance of knowing who we are. We are towns and cities. We are a really diverse bunch of people. But I think the key word for me is potential. What Greater Manchester has in spades is potential. And it's built on a foundation's certain amount of maturity. And I think Jessica was very clear in talking about, we have our universities, and our city core. So, we have Manchester and Salford, Bolton University. They are real innovation taking place there, new ideas sparking, and these are universities that stand in their own right. And how we then, what we do with those things that we have, some of this great maturity that we've got, and we think about what the place is, who we are in Greater Manchester, and all of these towns and cities and the communities that we are, and the local businesses that make up Greater Manchester, because we are a team of different kinds of people doing different kinds of things. And I think when we talk about the future and meeting the challenges that Sir Howard, set out, and the impact that we've all endured, I think was the word he used. I couldn't agree more. Is about being optimistic and positive. It's about, for me, not about whining about why things aren't like they are, or kind of going cap in hand, going, oh, can we have some money? Can we have some investment for this? But using our local knowledge as local leadership in the area to create an environment of opportunity, of innovation, and to put together credible offers of how we tackle some of this stuff, to create solutions. And in order for us to be credible, it's about how we have delivery. It's the pipeline of what we've got planned. It's the delivery on that plan, on that pipeline, and it's having genuinely interesting propositions to go with. And there's two things I wanted to talk about. One was picking up on what Jessica said about innovation, and about what Sir Howard said about government's appetite to invest in innovation. We have an opportunity, and I think there's a comment in the chat where we have some great ideas that come out of Manchester, out of Salford and out of Bolton and out of our universities. And then what happens is they disappear off somewhere. And how do we capture that value to make sure that when we have these ideas, we have the capacity locally to get them to market, to get a product that we can then actually manufacture and have here, employ local people to deliver and make, and then capture that value locally. And then on top of that, in order to make that work, how do we then bring in the skills element? And we know we have really diverse people in Greater Manchester, and reaching out into the corners of Greater Manchester, into all those towns and suburbs, to get that broad demographic of people that we have, and skill them into a way that allows them to have a job for the future, that in one of our frontier sectors, and means that we can meet the needs that business has, to get those ideas and that innovation and those new things into marketable products that we can have locally. And so Innovation GM and the work there is particularly exciting, and it has something in common with the Mayoral Development Corporation in Stockport, which I am really proud of, and I am so pleased that Andy's already mentioned it, and I am going to harp on about it as long as everybody will listen. But what it has in common is about teamwork, and the Mayoral Development Corporation has the mayor. The Mayoral Development Corporation, it has Stockport MBC involved, it has the combined authority, we needed government involved, we needed Homes England involved, we've got to get, you know, transport, so we've got TFG, we've got a lot of people to get together behind this idea to create something that is credible, that has a pipeline of delivery, and that is being delivered. And Innovation GM is the same. It has the potential because it is built on a team of different kinds of people that have found something that actually they align with each other. They're aiming in the same direction, and where we can align and where we can agree, it means we can be stronger as we go forward. And it is something I'm really and I think I'm as excited about Innovation GM as I am about the Mayoral Development Corporation. And so it creates opportunity. And importantly, I want to go back to what Chris said and the big dreaded B word. But if we just sit back and wait, then our new relationship with the EU will just be the disaster that a lot of us will say, you know, was expecting it to be. And in the meantime, we're failing the people that we represent. They rely on us to have work in the future. It's basic, a roof over your head and a job to go to. And I think we have therefore a responsibility to think about how do we make the most of opportunities. And as the government thinks about global Britain and what the new role for Britain is in the world, we've got to think, well, when we're talking about levelling up, we're not just levelling up amongst Greater Manchester, but how do we then contribute to Team GB? How are we punching at our weight to help ensure that Britain can be successful on a global stage, that we can see this country do well, because ultimately it's the people that we represent that will be the ones paying the price if we don't manage to make the most of the opportunities that come forward. I'll leave it there, Chair, and hand back to you. Thank you.
Thanks, Elise, and thank you for the work that you're doing on innovation across Greater Manchester, and obviously in Stockport as well, because the administration in Stockport has made such a real difference to the life chances of young people and others across the borough. And, you know, it's often overlooked, but Stockport wasn't even on the radar a few years ago, and now it is the place to invest, the place to live, and it will hopefully be the place to be in the future. Sorry, Sir Howard, but that's me with my Stockport MP hat on. We've also got a number of MPs here. Sadly, Tony Lloyd and Jeff Smith, they have been on, but have had to go. But I don't know, Lucy, whether you want to say a few words?
Yeah, very, very briefly. Obviously, some of us don't need to put on our sleeves on show how cool our own areas are, because I think, you know, they just sort of come naturally to us. But yeah, it's nice to be here as a guest rather than the chair, Andrew. I won't be offended that you've attracted a much bigger audience than some of my meetings did. But anyway, yeah, I just wanted to, I think it's been really, really informative, really good conversation, actually. I've taken a lot from it. And obviously I'm the shadow business minister on the Labour side, so there's a few things there for me to think about. But I think from a national point of view, one of the things I just wanted to raise was around this point about industrial strategy, because I think it's absolutely critical, and Chris is right. I think there's a lot of disappointment locally that the kind of industrial strategy framework seems to have just been sort of ditched by the government, and all that hard work that's gone into local industrial strategies has seemingly potentially been ditched with it. And you know, we are at a massive point of transition now, aren't we? I mean, COVID has created that. We've got Brexit too. But then even without those things, we had the necessary transition to green and to digital. And I think unless you have a really holistic industrial strategy that has local industrial strategies underpinning it, we can't manage that transition. We can't go to the places that we need to go to. It will require quite a lot more active government, whether that be local or national, than we've been used to over recent years. So it's a real shame that we've lost that. But I think we can obviously try and do some of that, you know, locally, as everybody is doing as well. And I think for me, a lot of that is about having an industrial strategy that doesn't rely on sort of trickle down and kind of the market knows best and we'll just leave it to the market. I think all the contributions we've had today are really around that inclusive growth agenda and how we can deliver inclusive growth. And that's why I think a really robust industrial strategy towards that greener digital future outside the EU is absolutely critical, and being place-based within that. So one of the questions I sort of had for some of the people on the panel, really interested to know your views on some of these things. But I think we can't have those conversations without looking at some of the incentive and tax regimes in this country and how they sort of incentivize all the wrong behavior, essentially. Your businesses are incentivized to not invest in places and bricks and mortar, and they're incentivized not to invest in people so much. So what do some of the panel think about issues, the thorny issues, for example, of business rates? We've long been promised business rate reform. It's now more urgent than ever, as we're seeing the sort of vacating of very expensive city and town centre sort of premises and the move to online and so on. What are some of your thoughts about how that could be replaced? Do we need to look at it in a much more holistic way? It's just my own personal kind of thought on that. I'd be really interested to hear what some people's thoughts are on that, Andrew.
Thanks, Lucy. We'll bring the panelists in to answer the questions after we've heard from all the MPs and Lord Stunnell as well. Andrew, I don't know if you want to say a few words. A former Stockport MP alongside me and now in the House of Lords.
Yes, Stockport's a bit overrepresented on this line. Well, I'll start by making a very cheap political point, and that is to say I'm delighted that everybody liked the industrial strategy that was introduced by Vince Cable during the coalition, and I share your disappointment that it's being taken out. However, having said that, can I say it's been a very interesting and useful session so far. We shouldn't in any way underestimate the challenges that we face. But at the same time, we can use the size of the challenge as, if you like, a bit of shock therapy to induce some of the changes that we know have been needed for quite a long time. And a number of issues have been raised, but I'll pick out just two or three which occur to me very strongly, one of which is the whole quality of life issue. A lot of people have discovered that their working life hasn't been satisfactory, and they've changed it compulsorily. They would never have volunteered themselves to do it, but they've found it's a better life for them. And conversely, some people have found that their life hasn't changed and it's become more of a drag, more of a drudge than it was before. And if we can retain the benefits and get rid of the disbenefits, that will be a really significant step forward, not just in Greater Manchester, but across the whole country. And I'll make the point about all sorts of things, that air quality improved drastically during the lockdowns. Well, let's not have a permanent lockdown, but let's have a permanent increase in air quality and work towards whatever measures will produce that result, which incidentally will also produce a health dividend and a whole lot of other well-being dividends that we ought to be latching onto. I like Chris Fletcher's point about the need for a complete reset of many buildings. Office and retail, obvious examples, and using those imaginatively to find a way of meeting the emerging needs that there are for small startups, for small green industry, investment and so on. We ought to be able to work to get some kind of Greater Manchester strategy which resets how we're using our building stock that we've got at the moment. And so Howard mentioned the transition to zero carbon, which is something I've been rabbiting on about for decades now. The expertise we have in Greater Manchester on life sciences and energy, and the opportunities we've got with our building stock to practice what we're preaching, are things which I hope we can use to make Greater Manchester a leader on getting towards a zero carbon economy, drawing on those skills and so on. And that brings me to my final point, you'll be happy to hear, Andrew, which is if you want any of these things to happen, you actually need a skilled workforce that can deliver it. And you also need, in particular, you need a construction industry that can deliver it, because you won't get any new buildings or conversions or anything like that unless you've got a construction industry to deliver it. And the construction industry is short of skills, desperately short of skills, short of manpower. And there's a very big investment program we've all got in our minds, whether it's in transport or health or education or housing. All of those things only happen if we've got a vibrant construction industry flourishing, and we haven't got the skills or the capacity to do that. I'm a big pusher for retrofit of housing across Greater Manchester. We just haven't got the skills to do it. We haven't got the people to do it. So my final hobby horse, which I've raised in this group several times over several years, is please can we have a skills academy for the construction sector based in Greater Manchester, which actually provides us not just with bricklayers and plumbers, but people who can handle the new technology that's needed in the new style of buildings to get us towards a zero carbon economy for Greater Manchester.
Thanks, Andrew. Some really important points there, and particularly with you on clean air, because as well as being a Stockport MP, I'm a Tameside MP, as Jason Prince from TFGM has texted me to remind me. Denton is one of the most heavily air polluted parts of the conurbation outside of the city centre, mainly because of two motorways, and it is absolutely something that we have to tackle as a city region going forwards. Barbara Keeley, who also represents a very heavily air polluted part of the conurbation, mainly because she's got 3 motorways to trump my 2. Do you want to say something as well?
I do, yes, I do. I'll say a couple of things first, but it was mainly transport, as Andy has raised, that I wanted to talk about. And you're quite right. I mean, air quality is a concern. And of course, we've been through a time, haven't we, particularly during the first lockdown, when people realised it didn't have to be like that. You know, yes, we had the 3 motorways, but people weren't using them. And people realised what a quieter life and what a better air quality could mean to them. Just before I get into the transport thing, just to say that the BBC announcements yesterday could clearly be very good news for Salford and other parts of the north, I think. And I think that, you know, linking up with Leeds, if Leeds gets that sort of journalism hub that there seems to be the idea that they will have, then that's going to be good. But that needs transport too, and we will need this after the pandemic, because, you know, I'm still very much thinking about all the people who work in Media City, you know, creatives and other people that have been excluded from support, and they're going to be hurting for a long, long time. That you know, it's been a year now, and we know that they're in a bad place, don't we? And I just to say, I think the other thing that's been said is what Lucy said about business rate reform. I think that is needed now, you know, because how people are struggling, you know, now, let alone having to actually go back to paying business rates. So, but what I wanted to highlight is both that point that Andrew's just made about air quality, and we shouldn't accept, and I don't think people will accept, going back to that awful full motorways that was round, the 3 of them that was round my constituency, because, you know, that's no quality of life. You know, it really isn't for the people who live near it, and it causes all kinds of health problems. But for the people who are stuck on it all of the time, the M62, the M602, the M6, it's just miserable existence. But I think that when I'm listening to Andy and I'm thinking, you know, he's talking about a modern, affordable, reliable public transport system, I think there's just a big chunk of my constituency that's just missing what it needs. the tram only goes to Media City and to Eccles. The rest of my constituency doesn't have that. So the kind of people rely on motorways and they rely on trunk loads and they rely on the car. And I think improving the buses would make a huge amount of difference. But the problem is a lot of the transport for my constituents relies on national organisations that do not have plans that go where we want to go. So we don't have the rail plans, and we don't have the rail plans, and we don't have the other things we need. I mean, it's worth saying, isn't it? Remembering what the motorways used to be like. Remember what the trains used to be like on the lines that go through my constituency. Overcrowded, inaccessible stations, poor timetables. I can't think how much time I've spent with friends groups trying to negotiate and help them with very small changes to timetables. So that's all part of it. And your big picture, Andy, just has to include pulling in improvements in those areas, because the amusing thing in the budget was talking about the Freeport and the Freeport from Liverpool extending to Salford, to Port Salford, but there's no transport links. There's no, it's just missing so much of what it needs to be what people wanted it to be. And I don't want that development in Port Salford just to be part of moving jobs around. We don't want to be part of that, and I think there's a danger that Freeports could be that. So I mean, I kind of draw blank, because every time I talk to the highways people, they've got studies that reach out into the years ahead, but they never seem to come up with addressing the issues that we really have. So looking at a big map and seeing the gaps in it and doing something about those gaps would be really important to trying to get to that modern, affordable, reliable public transport system. But it just feels to me as if we've got a long way to go in some places. And you must feel that, Andy, because you represented Lee, and Lee was in a bad place like that as well. And it just seems every time we fix something, like the Lee guided busway was good, but it was full by the time it got to my constituency. It was so used, it was just full all the time. So I spent all my time trying to deal with that. And we don't ever seem to get, to really deal with these capacity issues and these sort of timing issues. So that it's wonderful to have that vision, but I just know that we've got some issues getting there.
Thanks, Barbara. And then the last parliamentarian we've got is Kate Green, and then we'll bring in some of the other questions as well. Kate.
Hi, thank you very much, Andrew. There is really nothing that's been said this afternoon to disagree with. These are absolutely the things that we will all know we want to see, indeed have been campaigning for, to see even before the pandemic, and the pandemic has merely made it more compelling and more urgent. But I think for me, if we're talking about levelling, then implicit in that is that we're levelling up everybody in Greater Manchester, and we earlier talked about inclusive growth. And I think, every project, every initiative, every strategy that's been discussed this afternoon can and must reach the poorest, the most marginalised, the most excluded. But please don't let's assume that it will happen without our being proactively determined that it should do so. And when I was first elected to Parliament in 2010, Deloitte, who's now left the call, I think, and Paul Goggins, who of course sadly is now not with us, and I set up with a number of colleagues, including I think some on this call, the Greater Manchester Poverty Commission. And 10 years on, we still have a great deal of poverty in this city region, and even the strategies that we've been talking about this afternoon won't necessarily address that poverty for everyone if we're not very determined to ensure that they do so. And so when we're thinking about industrial strategy or skills strategy or town centre regeneration or public transport or arts and leisure or our wonderful research institutions and initiatives or whatever it is, and they're all fabulous things to think about, we also need to think, how is it that everything we're doing is going to reach those most marginalised and excluded of our community? How is it going to include disabled people who still feel very left out of a lot of the success that we can see in front of us? How do we make sure that older people are not left isolated and left behind by these initiatives? How do we make sure that struggling young families aren't in the really difficult financial circumstances that many will have already faced and will have seen exacerbated by the pandemic? How do we make sure that we make the most of our diverse ethnic and cultural communities and genuinely bring about opportunities and social cohesion? And I think that just leads me to throw one more thing into the pot that we haven't really talked about much today, Andrew, which is how are we going to ensure that the voice of every Mancunian is in this discussion and having their say about what they want in this levelling up agenda and how they want it to make a difference for them and for their family. And I think, you know, I'm like most politicians, I'm terrified of the idea of somebody else other than us making the decisions. But actually, I think that's the other thing we might have to do very differently if we're serious about levelling up. The Greater Manchester Poverty Commission did a lot of listening, and we discovered an awful lot of latent talent and a lot of people with ideas about what they wanted to see for their futures. And I think this time around, perhaps the biggest challenge for people who are used to making a real difference, which is everybody on this call, I think, is to do it in partnership with everybody who lives here, and especially to do it in partnership with the people who in the past have always felt least involved, most left behind and most excluded. And if we're really serious about levelling up, those are the people we need to level up for.
Yeah, thank you, Kate, for that. I completely agree with you. We've had a number of questions. So what I'm going to do, if you can be quick with your questions, and I will fire them at a particular panel member. That's the perk of the job, being the chair. And if you can be as quick as possible with your answers as well, so we can get in as many questions as possible. The first one's Johnny Morgan from ENW.
Hi there, thank you very much. So yeah, from Electricity Northwest, I just wanted to ask, as we invest in a green recovery, how do we ensure that net zero isn't just for those who can afford it? And how can we ensure that we don't leave anyone behind? I suppose following up from Kate's point there, but specifically looking at sort of green initiatives for people to make sure we don't leave people behind.
Brilliant. Andy.
Thanks, Johnny. I think it's a great question, because I think we've got an opportunity now with the COP coming up, COP26, to kind of reset the climate narrative. Because for some people, when they hear it, they think it's going to cost me more. You know, it's like an extra burden to be able to meet those objectives. I think we've got to sell it as climate justice, social justice, or, you know, you meet the climate crisis by solving the jobs crisis. And, you know, it's about, I think, you know, Andrew Stunnell was touching on this. We get there by giving people more affordable public transport, homes that are cheaper to run. We get there by retrofitting all of our properties, because that can create thousands of quality jobs for young people in Greater Manchester. And when have we, as a generation of politicians, ever been able to say to younger people that if they train in a certain set of green construction skills, they'll likely have a job for life? Because they will, because of the scale of that challenge that's ahead of us. So I think we've got to kind of sell a new way of thinking about this, which is the quicker you go to solve the climate crisis, the more you are furthering your aims of building more social justice, more resilience in our communities, higher quality jobs. And my aim always as Mayor of Greater Manchester has been basically to make us the UK's leading digital city region and the UK's leading green city region. Why? Because digitalisation and decarbonisation are the two big forces at play in the 21st century economy. And any city that's a leader in one or better, both of those things, is going to be a truly global industrial leader. And I think if you look around all English cities, Andrew, I don't think any other has got a shout to be the UK's leading digital and green city region. London is digital at the moment, but we're second to them on that. But can they be green given the scale? I don't think so. I think that they're going to struggle, and they've they've not got the advanced materials and manufacturing that we have. So I think we've got a shout to be absolutely in pole position. And for those who don't know on this call, Electricity Northwest have been working with Steve Rotherham and I through what's something called Net Zero Northwest. And they are the first electricity provider, energy provider in the country to have aligned with a city region plan, i.e. our plan, to be net zero by 2038. And they're going to need parliamentarian support, Andrew, with Ofgem to be able to get the right investment permissions with regard to what will be needed to move the Greater Manchester grid that quickly in the right direction. So I like what Andrew Stunnell said. I'd be all in favour, Andrew, of a green construction, not just a construction skills academy, a green construction skills academy. We need the MPs on the call, and I know you probably support this, so we should have a local skills control to build a skills ecosystem to feed a growing digital economy and a growing green economy. And that's why, Lucy, you were so right to say the sidelining of local industrial strategies was such a backward step. But I strongly agree with what's been said on this call today, Andrew. We've got to be the city region that shines most brightly in the spotlight of COP26. And I think the work we've done over the last 4 years puts us in a position where we can do that. We have a science-led target. Most cities have a political target for zero carbon. Ours is informed by the Tyndall Centre at the University of Manchester. So that sets us apart as well. But we've got to create a new narrative that says going faster on the green agenda delivers better homes, better jobs, better transport, more livable communities, better lives for our residents. And we've got to somehow bring that narrative all together.
Brilliant, thank you.
Andrew, can I just very briefly...
Of course you can, Lucy.
I mean, obviously fully support Andy there and Electricity North West. I'm sure as parliamentarians we'll gladly push those issues through Parliament. But my main critique on the government about some of this is, and I think this is where the government really could take a lead from places like Greater Manchester, is you can't just will the ends, you have to will the means. And we've got these targets, we've got some really ambitious targets locally and nationally on these agendas, but we're just not willing the means to get us to those ends. And that's really hard, difficult stuff that requires government to be a lot more involved in it. So I just wanted to say, I think we do locally will the means in GM, but we're not doing that nationally.
Thanks, Lucy. And next we've got a question from Charlie Norman from MSV. Charlie.
Thanks very much. To be honest, the question that I'd posed in the chat has been answered about a greener and fairer recovery. So I'd just like to ask about all the issues that have been raised and the optimism that's been raised. How can we link that to better health for the residents of Greater Manchester through the green recovery, through cleaner air, through exercise space, through better housing for people? So I'm just wondering if everybody could comment, or someone could comment on how we link this to better health and longer living for the residents of Greater Manchester.
I'm going to give that to Elise as a councillor, because obviously they have an important role to play in both the health and well-being of their citizens. So Elise, can you touch on that?
I'm tempted to just say Mayoral Development Corporation. I think there's the holistic approach, and I think Andrew's right when he says that local councils and the roles that we have as local leaders to pull together, and I think so Howard used the word convene the right people together to tackle, to take a holistic approach, because digital isn't a separate thing anymore. We've done 10 years of progress in 10 months in digital, and so it can't be a separate thing. It is a fundamental, a golden thread that runs through everything that we do. And the same with green. It has to be part of that impact assessment that you do as a basic. What is this going to deliver? The Mayoral Development Corporation takes communities that exist, because it's a place that exists where people live now, and seeks to deliver regeneration because there's potential there, but to do it their lives are better. So creating new parks, building new buildings that are going to meet those digital, smart, green credentials. And so it is a tagline, new is coolest, greenest, but that's because it captures exactly that idea that you pull together these things. And about all age living, one of the particular projects we've got at the moment in the Mayoral Development Corporation is St Thomas's Hospital site. It's an abandoned hospital site. It's been abandoned for over 10 years, decrepit, falling down. It's a ruin. And we're going to take that and we're going to build intergenerational living, smart, fully digital, future-proofed, green, zero carbon. It's going to have a 70-bed dementia care facility. It's going to have intergenerational homes that live where different people can live together close to each other, and so you're building connections and communities of people that can support each other, and with that how people can live at home for longer in a healthier way. And we're going to try and tackle all of that, and that's just one project within the Mayoral Development Corporation. So I think there's an active role for local government to play when it works with other people, and when it knows itself well and it knows what it's aiming to do and it has a clear vision, then and an ambition, it can convene those people that can make it happen for the benefit of the residents, of the people that are already there, not just about bringing new people in, but about the communities that already exist.
Andrew, could I make just a very quick comment just to add to what Elise said? It's just the centrality of work. I think the last year has shown us anything is that some people in our city region are fortunate enough, and it includes all of us on this call, to have work that improves their physical and mental health. But there is a hell of a lot of people in our city region whose work damages their physical and mental health, the nature of it. And I just think that if that isn't one of the biggest learnings coming out of the pandemic, then I think as a country we will be completely missing happen right in front of our eyes. Some people do not have jobs that allow them to protect their health, and that is a bigger issue for us in Greater Manchester than it is for people in other parts of the country.
I think you're absolutely right, Andy, about having safe working practices and ensuring that everybody in Greater Manchester can have as healthy a life as possible. And also don't underestimate the value of our green spaces as well. I know they were only around for 12 years, but the old Greater Manchester Council's lasting legacy to the county was the transformation of the river valleys from industrial backwaters to linear country parks, and every borough's got the legacy of that, and it really is something that we should be proud of. We've got a question from Julian Ashworth.
Hello, yes, it's Julian Ashworth here. I work at Transport for Greater Manchester. We know that the regional centre and town centres have a key role in our 2040 transport strategy, and that could be under threat because of increased flexible working and fewer people travelling into the town centres, and also job losses in certain sectors there. So how can we encourage other businesses to take up that released capacity in workspace and travelling space into town centres, so that we can relocate them into a more accessible place, and giving more people the opportunity to then travel by sustainable travel to their work and get themselves out of cars in the process?
Thank you. Chris, do you want to answer?
Yeah, it's an interesting one, and I think you've made some interesting points there, Julian. And again, it's not just about, you know, all of a sudden everyone's going to be working from home or everybody's going to be back in the workplace or whatever. It's that blend really, and there will be certain new demands placed on our public transport services around that. I think from the point of view of if we were to maximise the opportunity, I was talking about with the new workspaces, then we certainly do have to incentivise them. But also, and again, this is picking up on a little bit, I think, what Barbara was saying around the Freeport bit and the port. What we can't afford to do is just have displacement. There is absolutely no benefit of moving a business from Trafford into the middle of Manchester city centre. It doesn't quite work like that, and this is one thing we've really got to work on. However, what we've got to do is just picking up on what other panelists have said. If we get this right, there will be a huge increase in the number of businesses, for example, around the net zero, low carbon, around the new sectors coming through, digital, etc., etc. So we're not just talking about moving existing businesses into these areas. We're talking about using these for brand new businesses. This is the idea I've said around incubators and startups. You do that, you're actually potentially increasing demand for public transport. Now, again, there's a lot of what ifs and theories and one thing and another around this, but we've got to use this as a starting point to do that. And to do that, we've got to put those incentives in place. This then leads into the question that Lucy raised around business rates. Is there a way that you can start to use that to encourage those people to come in and then reinvest that into the public transport service? All these things are interlinked. We can't do one thing on its own. And again, you know, but we've got to make that starting point somewhere, and we've got to have those ideas in mind and in place to be able to work towards those in some way, shape, or form.
Thanks, Chris. I'm going to take one more question, but please, we've had so many questions, which we're really grateful for. We are capturing those and we will take them forward as an action plan. So don't think that you've been ignored, but I'm going to ask Sasha Deepwell to ask the last question. Sasha.
Oh, thank you for that. And what an inspiring afternoon. Waiting the week. Thank you to all the panelists. I've got a specific question for Sir Howard Bernstein on whether you have a view on how we can be leaders in inclusive growth. And particularly, I'm thinking about being proactive in terms of tackling inequalities and being more positive about promoting the diversity that we've got in this great region in terms of our place and people strategies.
Howard.
Wow, that's a big question. I think, well, if I'm being really frank, the ultimate answer is devolve a lot more power to local leaders and communities, because I think we will demonstrate a much stronger commitment about tackling inequality than so far has been characterised in successive government policies and practices, if I'm being really frank. I think the other point I would make, and it actually flows from something Lucy was saying earlier, I think there's real room now for a fundamental review about what we mean by national and local taxation policies. I don't think we're going to get very far when we just say let's review business rates, because fundamentally what we're saying is that the burden of some places is going to change very significantly. So all the places that potentially benefit now are actually going to become major disbenefits in the future. And it's not the only form of taxation which I think is disproportionately wrong and prejudicial. I think corporation tax is going to be coming under increasing pressures. I think fuel and car taxation is going to be coming under increasing pressures. We're already having a debate about whether or not taxation of innovation-based companies is actually fair and reasonable. I just think in the light of this pandemic, we should be having a much more progressive debate about what the role of taxation policy is and the need to reform it generally.
Thank you very much, Sir Howard. And we'd love to take lots more questions, but sadly our time has run out. But I think in conclusion, and as chair of the all-party group on Greater Manchester, I am so excited for the future of our city region. I think there are lots of risks, and Brexit and how we come out of the pandemic and how we readjust to new ways of working are obvious risks. But I think the opportunities are many, many more fold than the risks if we grasp those opportunities. And our strengths as a city region, as Elise said, is that we are a collection of communities, but we don't stand alone. We stand together as a family. We fight for Greater Manchester and we build back better for the whole of Greater Manchester. As Andy said, transport has to be the linchpin of all of that. Get the transport, the connectivity right. We build back those connections that have long since gone because of bus deregulation and rail privatisation and so on. But then we get the housing standards right, we get the jobs of tomorrow in here, we become that tourist destination, that conference destination that Sheona was talking about. And we have a cleaner, greener, healthier, greater Manchester, where we narrow those health inequalities, where we ensure that people can live successful and prosperous lives. And that's not all pie in the sky. It's achievable. It's achievable because we've got that vision, we've got that political determination to make it happen. And we've got some of the best business leaders, we've got some of the best politicians, we've got some of the best entrepreneurs and some of the best thinkers and doers, not just in this country, but in the world. It's why we led the first industrial revolution and why we will lead the next green industrial revolution as well. And so we will build back better, we will build back stronger, and I'm looking forward to all of you helping to drive that forwards. Now, if anybody has any information that they want, or they want to pass any further comments on to the participants, please get in touch with the brilliant secretariat at Devo Connect. I'd like to thank all our panelists for their contributions, for the parliamentarians for joining us, and for everybody else for dialing in. I hope this has been a good session. I've enjoyed chairing it, and thank you very much.